Um, the slide, yes, you guys are here. Well, I'd like to thank everyone. I know it's hard to pull you away from the lunch and these stimulating conversations that I can hear in the hallways. Part of the reason why we host this food summit is really for the conversation, right? And the panels that we have organized is to stimulate conversation around topics that are of importance to our community. Now, some of the conversations have been deep and sometimes tense. And it's not just because it's hot in this room right now, but we felt the heat and the urgency by the voices in this room. And, we have invited folks from all over the food system, all over the state, in fact, all over the country, to come and participate in these conversations, to share with us what they know, to listen to what we have to offer. And so we've had vibrant panels over the last 4 days, and in particular, starting yesterday, with this just powerful panel on the influence of our youth and their participation and their vision in the food system. Yes, it was awesome. It was awesome. I don't think there was a dry eye in the audience. It was that strong. And then, we followed that up with other conversations about how challenging it is to grow food, especially for beginning and new farmers, for veteran farmers. Those farmers are operating at a time with dwindling water sources and increasingly difficult challenges. In the last 5 years, we have lost 16% of farmland in Hidalgo County, and we have lost 11% of farmers in our region. I'm not exactly sure why, but obviously there's some challenges there that we've tried to bring forward and discuss. Well, how can we help support farmers survive and be prosperous? We also follow that up with conversations about farm workers, right? How can we build a food system where not only farmers thrive, but farm workers as well, those who help harvest the food and bring it to our tables. And then we also then talked about how do we maximize the resources that are currently available, and not just the opportunities for federal funding and state funding, but also the intellectual and social capital and cultural capital that we have here in the Rio Grande Valley. So we're culminating the food summit with a discussion about these conversations that we've been having over the last 18 months. The conversations that we've invited food systems, folks from consumer groups, journalists, we've invited educators, healthcare professionals, community-based organizations, farmers markets, and I would like those who have participated in the working group in any capacity that are here today to just take a moment and stand up so we can recognize who you are. So in that very brief moment, I hope that you guys know who you were applauding for. We had some farmers and producers. We have had faith-based leaders. We've had school food procurement. We have had administrators. We've had educators. We've had young people. I put myself in that category. Yeah, all of us here on the stage. We're still very young at heart. And so what we've done is we put together a food resolution. You'll see in the front is a handout of a resolution, of food resolution. And in there is what we call our first published draft of a vision. Now, today, we're actually going to discuss this resolution. I'm just going to read the first part out loud, and then we're going to open up to this panel, and we're going to ask a special guest to help us and talk to you guys about the journey of this. So the Food Valley Resolution is that we envision a sustainable food system from its production and distribution to consumption and education that increases well-being for all. This includes producers, farm and food workers, local businesses like grocers and restaurants, students and their families, and consumers to benefit from the opportunities of a prosperous, resilient, and equitable food system. That's the first statement. And under there, you'll see 6 bullet points from each of the different voices, several voices that we've included in that conversation. And I encourage you guys to read through them. Well, you will notice that each of these bullet points have been a session of this food system. Right? We've had one on school food procurement. We've had one on food and farm workers, on small and middle-sized agricultural producer sustainability, middle of the chain infrastructure. We've had one on how we want to strengthen the relationships among people, organizations, and governments. And we had one about the idea of what it means to be a sustainable food system in terms of stewardship for our land. And so we're presenting this to you, and we're also inviting the perspectives of those who participated in the creation of this. And to kick off that conversation, we have a very special guest, and it's my privilege to actually invite, and it's actually makes me really proud to have USDA personnel here in the Rio Grande Valley that want to listen and participate in these conversations. I'd like to invite the USDA Undersecretary Jenny Moffitt on the stage. She is the Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs. Now, Undersecretary Moffitt, I've invited her as both the Undersecretary and also as a fifth-generation farmer who has worked her career in various capacities around community action that fosters economic growth for everyone. And so she has done this in various capacities, so you might see her take a hat off and on as she discusses some of these topics, but it's my pleasure to have Undersecretary Moffitt here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And it is truly a pleasure for me to be here today. We just enjoyed a wonderful lunch, and I just want to take a moment to thank all of the people all along the way who've made that lunch possible. From the farm workers to the food workers to the people here in the kitchen to the people who were serving us, everyone along the way who made that possible. That is why we are all here, because food is so important, and the connectivity that food brings is so important. Alex, you talked about the resolution and the vision, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and to read it. As I was looking at the agenda and I saw that there was a vision, I took a moment to just jot down a few thoughts of what my vision is for a food system. And what I just heard read out loud was so much more aligned with what I was thinking. An equitable food system, a food system that serves all. A food system for all is so incredibly important. One that empowers communities and coalitions, one that is centered on farmers, farm workers, food system workers, one that is building and strengthening local and regional food systems. At lunch, we talked about I'm very passionate also about sustainable agriculture and soil health and regenerative agriculture. It wasn't regenerative agriculture when I first started to work on it, but we talk in soil about how it's an extraction system versus a regenerative system. And the same is true for our food system. We can have an extraction food system. We can have one that is extracting the resources from communities like here in the Rio Grande Valley, or we can have one that is regenerating the food system here, the one that is building not just wealth, but human capacity to continue to grow and nourish our own selves with that great food. At the beginning of the pandemic, if you recall, it was 4 years ago now, but there was a lot of conversation about what is considered essential. And I was at the state government at the time. We fought hard to have food workers, food system workers, whether that is farm workers and people who all along the food chain deemed essential. And that is because food is essential. And I'm a Californian, so I gotta say also water is essential as well. I know deeply how important that is as well, but food is essential. And it is essential that we continue to carry that banner that we all championed 4 years ago, early on in the pandemic, that the food system and food system workers are essential. And so taking that then and really realizing that we've got this whole work and we've got people at USDA and we've got the business centers and all sorts of work that is really taking that banner and saying, because the food system and because our food workers are so essential, we've got to really rethink how our food system's working. Our food system, and the secretary talks about this for the past years, our food system has for decades now, for my entire lifetime, has really been focused on the get big or get out mentality. If you've got the resources, you can grow and you can get bigger. But what happened is so many farmers and so many small farmers and so many socially disadvantaged farmers and BIPOC farmers, they were left behind. We left a critical part of our food system behind in all that. So the food system workers and the food system is not always seen. We saw it at the beginning of the pandemic, and we've got to keep that energy going to see the food system for what it is and what it can be. And I say this because and now I'll get into really, Alex, what you want me to talk about was, as a 5th generation farmer myself, my family has been farming in California for 5 generations. When I was a kid, and then and even before that in the 1970s, my family farmed in the Santa Clara Valley. How many of you have been to the Santa Clara Valley, or now what is called the Silicon Valley? Yes. So my family farmed in the Valley of the Heart's Delight from the 1800s until the late 1970s. And at that time, and my grandpa and my grandma and all of the people in my family farmed. They were cattle ranchers. They farmed fruit trees. They farmed truck crops. It was a bounty place. And then we had the tech revolution, which just completely transformed the economy. So our family at that time, we continue to be farmers in California, but we moved to a different area, another really beautiful and fertile area. But there are challenges along the way in our food system. So my grandpa and my grandma, they farmed in the Santa Clara Valley, and then my dad and my mom moved to the Central Valley, where we have been farming and where I grew up. My upbringing was very much one of the farm, and so many, I would imagine, here in this room share this. After dinner, I would go out with my dad, and I would change the irrigation systems. Over spring break, other people went on vacation. I was, painting trees so they wouldn't get sunburned. I did, when I was in high school and I was interested in agriculture, I did research projects on our family's farm. I partnered with local organizations like the Audubon Society and the Native Grass Association to learn about different things we can plant on our farm to invite beneficial insects that will manage our farm pest population. I was very passionate from a young age on the farm, and that is what agriculture is. People talk about agriculture, and they talk about the culture in agriculture, and that is so true. I imagine each and every one of you knows that. Growing up in my farm town of 5,000 people, we all knew each other, and the culture and the community of agriculture was strong. On my family's farm, when I was running the farm, which I'll get to in a bit, we had 36 employees. And every one of our employees was part of our community. Every one of those employees, if they had kids in my family's town, was being taught in the 1st grade by my mom. And that is what community is about. So agriculture is very much culture, and it is very much community. And so as we talk about and as we're designing and as we're really thinking about the programs and the ways in which we at USDA are supporting agriculture, our food system, it is really with that in mind. That is forefront to what we are doing. Because if we don't look at and make sure we're factoring exactly who we're working with, then we're going to be shooting in the very wrong direction. So I grew up on my family's farm, was very involved in the farm from a young age, all through high school. After college, came back and alongside my dad, ran our family's farming operation. Our farm is organic walnuts, so we grow and process organic walnuts. We also, at that time that I was running our farm, we buy from about 70 other growers, mostly very, very small farms. I'm talking 2, 3, 5 acre farms, which in walnuts is like incredibly small. And we had a group of farmers, and so a lot of my job, I wear a lot of hats. When you're running a farm and you're the only person in the office, you're doing payroll, you're doing making sure all the bills are paid, making sure we get our loans every year. But I also worked directly with our farmers that we were buying the walnuts from to see how we can maximize the money that they're getting back to their farming operation. Our processing didn't happen because we wanted to be processing. Our processing happened because at first, when my dad converted to organic in the 1980s, he realized there was no one to process his walnuts. And so he realized he had to process his walnuts and then to develop markets. So we kind of stumbled into this whole processing and marketing thing. And we realized if no one else was able to process our walnuts, no one else was able to process other organic walnut growers' walnuts as well. And so slowly over time, farmers came to us and asked us if we could process their walnuts as well so that they can have a market. And our business model has always been, of course, employee and worker centered, of course, sustainable agriculture and farm and organic agriculture center, but also making sure that the bottom line for farmers that we were partnering with to sell their walnuts, that they were getting the maximum dollar that they could get back. And so one of the things I experienced when I was there and I was working on developing new sales for our farm was this group of small farmers in a region of California called Lake County. Very small farmers. They had what I would call an old heritage variety of walnuts called franquettes. You don't have to know what they are, but aside from the know that they're very delicious and very tasty. And while we have consumers, and especially in many of our international markets that want really nice, light quality, big, half count and large walnuts, we have some really incredibly deliciously flavored walnuts. And so this was a walnut called the franquette that they grew. When you crack that walnut, it has the hardest shell. And so when you crack that walnut, the half count just goes away. And so it was less marketable, it was less desirable in so many different kinds of our markets. But I said, let's figure this out. Let's figure out how do we get and tap into and the market of that these growers deserve, and how can I help facilitate this? How can I help market and brand their walnuts? And so I called them heritage variety. I partnered with, and this is where I'm getting to in this story, I partnered with a local organization who has been at our farm side since all of our transitions. When we transitioned to biological farming, when we transitioned to organic farming, when we transitioned a lot of our farm to renewable energy, I partnered with this organization who at that time was also now getting into building local and regional food systems. And so they had a grant and they had an opportunity to bring farmers to San Francisco, which was just a couple hours away from us, to be able to talk about our product in a different way. Instead of it being a commodity, this was something that was delicious, it was flavorful. I thought there was immense opportunities. Chefs were gonna love this product. I didn't get very far with that, unfortunately. We all have our trials, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not, but it's worth trying. But what it showed me then, and what it shows me now, is the power of our partnerships, the power of organizations that we as farmers often look to for resources and support. That is so critical. I am busy at my family's farm trying to make sure I'm paying our employees, trying to make sure I've got our loan in place to be able to keep our farming operation, trying to make sure that I'm doing all of these different things, and I don't have the time often to think about what is a business plan? How do I draft a business plan? What is the market opportunities that I could tap into? How do I even go about doing that? So to have an organization that could sit down with me, just like so many farmers need, to sit down with me to say, let's think through a business plan. So then, sometimes we will still try and fail, but maybe if I had a plan before I started marketing these franquettes walnuts, perhaps it would have gone a different direction. And And that is so critical. And so that is foundational to the work that I do today and to the conversations that I have in DC and across the country with our colleagues at USDA and with all of the really important organizations that we partner with. And so that is, to me, why these regional food business centers are so important. Why, when we are implementing, and I know there was a panel earlier today about farm to institution and local and regional food systems in selling direct to schools, selling direct to food banks and those sorts of things, why you can't just have the money to make that connection, why a farmer, you can't just say, okay, here's school, here's some money, buy from local farmers. You actually have to also have the money for the organizations that farmers go to, that schools go to be able to foster that connectivity. And that happens with trusted partners that are already in place here today. Many of you here in the room, and so many more that are here not in the room because they're probably out doing the work right now, or they're in other regions around the country. It's important, we call it technical assistance, but it is the connectivity tissue to make this work happen. So the regional food business centers, the money that we have for partnerships to be able to support farmers, to help overcome the barriers for farmers to get their food from farm to school, farm to hospital, farm to food banks is so critical and so important. And this is a systems approach. It is a systems approach that we take. I've learned a lot of things from my dad, but one thing I take away every single day and in every single conversation is that there is no one solution. Just like in soil health, there is no one solution to turning around and building and creating soil health. There's no one solution to marketing challenges. There are many different challenges, and there needs to be many different solutions pieced together to really make that happen. And it's really important for a primary reason, which is that it needs to be an equity-centered approach. When we don't do that, we leave the people behind. We leave critical people behind who have not had the resources to be at the table. We leave people behind who have been core and critical to our food system all the time, but they aren't able to access the same resources. At USDA, we have an immense amount of resources thanks to Congress really realizing that we had a food system that needed to be transformed. We had a food system that needed to be transformed. So we've developed all these different programs. These programs are only successful if the farmers and ranchers, if small farmers, if socially disadvantaged farmers, if BIPOC farmers actually know they exist and are able to apply, receive, and implement these programs. And so that is where I really charge you all as students, as organizations, as farmers, to really empower the community, empower the partnership, because this is a systems approach. So I'm going to stop there, and I really look forward to the conversation. And I want to just say this vision for a food system is a vision that we share at USDA. It's a vision we share in partnership, and partnership is absolutely critical, and community is critical, and it is a two-way street. It is not just us saying we want to do this, it's us saying, what do you need from us to make a difference? So please, I say this to say our door is open. I'm really grateful for all of your partnership. I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing. And as a former farmer myself, I hope that each and every one of you today will continue to support the farmers that we have, and to continue to also make it possible so that we have a much more equity-centered food system, one in which we bring back farmers, and we reverse that trend of losing farmers that you just talked about, Alex. So thank you.
So we've asked Undersecretary Moffitt to stay on stage. She does have to leave to catch her flight out of Harlingen, and so she has to, but we have on the agenda up until 2 o'clock with her. She's joined by some equally accomplished, passionate professionals on the stage. Let me introduce you to Vero Dimas, who's with a philanthropy at the moment, and she was previously with the Brownsville Wellness Coalition. We also have Rocio Hernandez, who is with IDEA Public Schools. She's an educator and a farmer, former farmer, runs a farm school program. And we have Dr. Ann Millard, who is retired, but still participating in various capacities as a consultant, as an advisor to our team. So I have one question so today's panel was really to just talk about the vision, and I think each of you guys have a copy of that. But I have one question for our panelists, because as we all know, a lot of this work, from farming to farm working, to advocating for our farm and food workers, to trying to change our food system, all of this work is care work, right? And I think everyone in this room cares, and we are trying our best to get more people to care about our food system and understand how it impacts our lives in many ways. My question to the panel is, why do this work? Like, tell me what has gotten you to care so much in a way that you have taken your career and made this your life's work? And how do you make sure that you continue to have the energy to care even when things are difficult? I'm going to start with Vero.
Yeah, that's a full question. Thank you so much again for having this space to be able to have this important conversation about the important work that we do in a collaborative effort, which is very important to recognize. And I will say that in both counties, in Cameron and Hidalgo County, where I know and have the experience in, I think the passion is that we talk about that was inherited to us in this area. I think our families work together, really important. I am the oldest of 3 girls, and my dad was an immigrant worker too, and he's the oldest of 11 children. And my mother is also part of brothers and sisters, 10 brothers and sisters. So if that was not taught through my family, I was not paying attention. But if I was not paying attention, my mother always reminded me, go talk to your tia and make sure she knows that at the farmer's market, she could double up her bucks and blah, 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 right? So for me, it's really important to recognize that there's that passion and the collaboration as a group, as a cultural area, right? And making sure that that is recognized here. When I began this work, I did not know how important the conversation of food insecurity was. I did not understand that the grapefruits that I was eating here locally, there was not enough for all of us here. They were being shipped out, right? So that's where I began that work. So I think for me, and short answer is that passion and the love to support farmers, just because it was instilled in my blood. And it's important to understand that it's a collaborative effort and we can't do it alone.
Testing. All righty. Well, I think this is a two-parted answer for me. I didn't have the history that you just mentioned. I didn't have the same story. My story was a little bit different, and I came it just kind of after high school into college. I don't think I understood systems at all, right? I just kind of thought, hey, this is how we get things. This is how we process things. Cool story. I just need to eat, right? So I was very blind to the food system. And so after quite a few conversations with this beautiful community in the RGV, a lot of faces, Katie, Dr. Rosales, Hernan, farmers like Diana Padilla, I started to gain a completely new lens as to how broken this system was. And I almost felt like, we all have a responsibility, right? I started working in the public school system 7 years ago. If anybody would have asked me, what did you want to do growing up? I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be a dietitian. Ask me today what I want to keep doing. It's this farm to school work. Because every single day, amazing staff like Taylor and some of the team that's not here today, who essentially we spend our entire day out there on the farm. Folks sometimes don't even understand. What do you do? Like, what is a farm to school program? And as I was telling William, every farm to school program looks different. Ours, we are very privileged. It's kind of like a sub-local system. We have a farm on our campuses. Our students go out to these farms. You can ask Taylor. Sometimes they're protesting. Why are we not on the farms today? Right? We have parents calling at the beginning of the year. When does the farm to school program club start at Idea San Benito? Because I would like to go, right? So at this point, and it didn't get there overnight, right? This program grew after 15 years. Hernan, you're a witness to that. And so seeing these little faces go out there, as soon as they start age 5, as soon as they graduate into, age 18 typically, they're exposed. They have a higher expectation of what the local food system needs to look like because they're out there, because they're planting seeds, because they're observing nature. They're looking at these beneficial pests, which before they were like, it's a bug, squish it. We are changing the mentality, and those smiles, that excitement. Miss, my mom used the broccoli you gave me yesterday. Janet, you know this, right? The excitement, all the pictures that I share with our team. It took years of buy-in for parents to support us, for administration to support us. Our students are our biggest marketers, right? And so seeing the joy, the smiles of all of these partners within our sub-local system in the campuses, in the school districts, is why I feel so passionate about this work. I'll pause there.
I just got rescued by Rocio, thank you. So I have lived in a lot of parts of the United States, and I've done field work in anthropology in rural Mexico for a couple of years in some villages. So I've had these different ways of touching and getting touched by the food system. And in anthropology, which I studied in graduate school, we were very interested in culture and trying to look at the whole of society. We didn't have a concept of a food system. I mean, thank God we've got one now. So I am invested in our efforts here, partly out of that kind of background that I have, but also when I came to the Valley about 20 years ago, I started working on diabetes prevention, pre-diabetes education, and which I always hated diabetes because I had studied the genetics of it in graduate school, and I just thought, I don't understand this, and I don't see how anybody's ever going to understand it. So, but anyway, here I was in the Valley, and yes, we are very sick with diabetes. Almost everybody has a relative who has diabetes. Almost every family is struggling with it. We have people who don't tell their kids that they have it because they don't want their kids to be depressed because it's regarded as a death sentence. So we have such a long way to go in making the food system here locally healthy for people. So we had a project over at the Pulga de Alamo, screening people for diabetes and pre-diabetes and giving them education. And we were trying to do diabetes education in a very respectful way. We weren't trying to be up in front of a class giving a lecture. We were trying to interact with people and give them some tools that they could use. And it was amazing what happened. I mean, not everybody got better, but there were people who with very little information would go forth and reduce their blood sugars to a healthy level. And they'd come back through in about a month and get tested again. This is all free testing, so that's a big drawing card, free service. And they'd be fine. I mean, I'm not saying this happened with everybody or even more than half the people, but those that did succeed with this were just astounding to me. So, and we had never set it up really as a place where you would come in regularly and get tested and see how you were doing, but the community began to use it that way. We initially set it up as, we just want to see if anybody will come, because they're out on Sunday afternoon with their families, having fun at the flea market, eating and buying things to eat at home, and buying other kinds of stuff, and just seeing what the entertainment is. But yes, people, a steady stream of people came through. I'd say we saw probably 1,000 people a year that we actually screened, and probably 12,000 who visited our booth every year for a number of years. Then COVID came and bam, we closed. We're trying to restart, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. Some people at the university are interested, but anyway, this is how I kind of got drawn into trying to work on these issues. And it's a love-hate thing. I mean, you know, we need to change. We need to find out how to change. We need to help people imagine how things could be better. And that's part of this food resolution is, and the involvement of students has been so great in this, because students often have the courage to imagine the best future, whereas we jaded old people are kind of like, I've been there, I've done that, didn't work, no, but let's try it again. Let's try it another way. Let's keep on pursuing it, because we can do something. It can be better. So that's my thought.
We're getting a microphone here. Undersecretary Moffitt, would you kindly answer the same question? Why do you do this? Why do you care so much?
I thought I was going to get to ask them questions.
No,
What? Oh, okay.
no. We want to hear it from you too.
Why do I care so much?
She's a farmer.
It's in our blood, right? It's I think, you know, it's in our blood as farmers, and but I care so much because even though we might be jaded as adults, and I totally hear you on kids, there is so much opportunity. There is so much good that is happening. And if we can find those pockets of good and great that are happening, like what's happening in your school, and transfer that to 10 more people, and then those 10 more people transfer that to 10 more people, just think of that. Just think of the power of one school going to 10 schools, going to then from there 100 schools. And there's so much good that's happening around our nation that we need to elevate, that we need to uplift. And so that's where the charge that I take every day is, how do I support and make sure that we can take down barriers when possible, so that those types of activities can continue to happen, but also how do I empower the doers of great work and give them the tools to share that with other people? Who can we bring along the way to be those transfer of knowledge to other people as well? And so that's why I do this work, because I see a food system. I see a food system that is better for our consumers, is better for our health, is better for our kids, and a future for our kids that is so much more bright when we have locally available grapefruit in every household, not just some households. So I see a food system that can meet the needs of all and actually do it in a better way for all of our economy and for all of our communities and for all of our health. So no charge there, Kate. No, and I think it's and it's really, and I'll do a part 2 here, Alex. And I think it's really important I'll just go. I'll just keep on going here. When I moved from working on my family's farm to working in state government, let me tell you, I got a lot of grief from my dad. First off, like he lost his like right-hand person. And so there was that too, but it was like, why do you want to work in state government? And I said, because people like us need to be there. Farmers, food worker, representation matters. Having people who have experienced this firsthand, growing food, building a food system, who have the boots on the ground experience in conversations that are so consequential to those of us in the field is so critical. And so sometimes I have a lot of hard conversations with our staff. They don't like to always hear the things, but we've got to have representation. And so, you all are great at all the jobs you have, but I will just put my plug in because the secretary would be remiss if I didn't. But we need to make sure that the halls of USDA, just like the halls of and the fields of every community around the country, have representation. So we're excited that we have our food supply chain fellows for our food systems fellows program. I'm excited that we have all of these different critical pieces where we're able to, and NRCS has done an incredible job bringing in more people, but we've got to also have representation in the decision-making rooms. And so part of that is building a workforce that is much more diverse, a workforce that has the background of the American food system. Part of it also is making sure, and I want to thank Alex and everyone who serves on the Equity Commission as well as so many other advisory boards that we have, that those voices come to us and we hear firsthand what's happening so that we can address it. If we don't know about it, we can't address it. So I think that's also it, is I always wear my farmer hat in my meetings, and so and so whenever my dad gives me grief, I just give him grief back. And I also say one last thing. I am a 5th generation Californian farmer, and I'm really worried that I'm going to be the last in my family lineage to be farming. Very concerned.
That is so true in the Valley too.
Yeah. So that's why I do what I do, because we've got to give opportunities for the next generation, and it will look different, and I hope it looks different.
Okay, I'm right here. I'm sorry. You won't see me on stage because the wisdom here. We did give you the opportunity to ask these participants and these contributors questions, but the reason why I asked about why do you do this and why do you care is because this care work is hard, right? I'm going to speak on behalf of the folks on the stage. It's underpaid. It's undervalued. And part of the reason why we continue to do the work is because we care so darn much. And that's actually what motivates us. I would love to be a GS-15 somewhere in the world. I'm using a government pay scale, which is at the top up there.
Some of us don't understand what GS-15.
No, I'm trying to say, I'm just making this because the GS-15 is like the top of the general pay scale, the USDA. I think there's an extra one for, above that. But this is not valued. This is not valued monetarily. So that care question is important because we all know you care, but how do we get everyone else to care while not giving up? I'm just going to tell you, because I had a question to me. Someone asked me, are you burning out? I won't tell you my response. I will not tell you my response. But that's a question I know I've had with each one of you. You know, and so if you can just, you're welcome to ask questions, but I want you to dig deeper a little bit, and so that we can get people. There you go. We got it.
I want to jump in. So we're creatures of habit. I think that it's super important to, I hate using this word, but we have to focus on our children, right? If they start learning these concepts and theories and observations, and they start forming relationships with farmers at a really young age, you're going to have a population of folks who's going to understand the value of local food, because they planted those, they harvested those. They know the difference between a carrot that was grown at their school farm or at someone else's farm locally versus the one that they got at HEB that traveled 1,200 miles. They're going to know the difference. Kids every single day tell us, I want to be a farmer when I grow up. That's the respect and the dignity and the value that we've seen with our program after 15 years of it being established. So we have kiddos not only talking about their career choice at such a young age, but they're telling us, they're confiding in us. They're like, Miss, can we go over to the orchard and have an orange with you and talk about our mental health issues? Of course, not verbatim, right? But they do pour their hearts out in these outdoor spaces. And so to answer your question, right, we have to focus on kids so that when they start growing and start graduating and going and maybe being your student or being Savannah's student, they have a completely different perspective, and we don't have to be fighting the fight so hard anymore, right? Because we've tackled it from the inside. We are part of a system. We want to change it. We can't rebuild it completely, but we can work with what we have, right? And that's why we have to work with schools. Me and Alan have been shouting it from the rooftops for years. Farm to school. Farm to school. Yes.
Yes, it's important. Next generation is so important in everything, whether it's farming, whether it's teaching, whether it's philanthropy, whether it's nonprofit work, because shout out to all my nonprofits that are here locally. Woo woo, right? Is anybody here? Nonprofits, yes. That's hard work, right? We're getting the word out. We're doing resources, education. It's true burnout. We've talked about this. Dr. Rosales, I think, is referring to my conversation. But it is important to understand that we do have to invest in the next generation, in the next, and I want to also give a shout out to everyone. Colin and I just had a conversation earlier talking about when we started this work. I started in this work 11 years ago, and this conversation about food insecurity, food systems, farmers markets, how are we, SNAP dollars, WIC dollars, who's learning about this? Elizabeth's doing a great job of advocating for everyone. And so we have moved the needle, y'all, here in the RGV. So shout out to everyone here. We have definitely done a great job working together, trabajando juntos para asegurar que la gente de aquí, de este valle, entiendan y sepan lo importante que son los sistemas in both languages, y'all. That's even harder, right? We have to understand that we're doing it in 2 languages, and we have to understand that it is important to give value to that. So burnout is real. Fill your cup first. I'm practicing what I'm preaching, y'all. I'm filling my cup first in order to be able to serve to others. So I think it's okay to talk about that. And it's okay to say, I'm tired. It's okay to say, hey, it's Saturday. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. My daughter is having a confirmation at 4 o'clock, and I am sitting here talking about filling my cup or burnout, right? So we need to definitely think about, bring those things, those conversations and those topics for everyone, whether you're a farmer or whether you're in the school industry, or you're just retired. I can't wait. I want to be Anne when I grow up. But definitely it is, true conversations, and I'm glad that we're having these conversations and we could talk about it freely and remind ourselves that we need to fill our cup too.
So it is care work. And my husband, so in my family, you're either in agriculture or you're in education. My mom is a first grade teacher. My husband taught for a long time, and now he's, now we had to move to DC, so he's in the school district there in DC. And he talks about how this is hard work. Hard work is hard work. And that is such an important thing. And it is so hard to address the burnout issue, because it is hard work, and it is hard work. And as a result, it's not just hard, we care so much, and when it doesn't go the way that we want it to go, it hurts that much harder. And so the burnout is not just because of the work, but it's also because of the struggle, because we care so much. And I think that's hard to overcome. Certainly there are tears. There are tears. And I think the key thing is to remember that we've got a community that is with us, and to search for that community, especially when we're on the brink of tears. But anytime, to reach out to that community, to connect with that community, to make sure that we have our community's back and our community has our back, so that we are together working on this. And I think it's, and as a woman in agriculture, we search, and a woman who works in government, we search for that partnership, and I harness and really tap into that partnership. We've got to have each other's back. We've got to support and uplift each other. And the same is with this. I'm looking, so I think it was Sue that we had lunch with earlier today. Sue? Oh, there. You talked about how you spent, 10, 20 years working on on building a food hub, right, of sorts. And 3 years every day working on building a food processing center, only to have the rug pulled out of you. And that's what we're dealing with. And when we have that happen, how can we pick ourselves up the next day and not just feel completely gutted? Just completely gutted by that. That is just, it's so hard. But at the end of the day, going to the people who remind us why we're here, what we're doing, getting back on our feet, because the last thing we want those people who got our work to do is to have them win, right? And so getting back on our feet, finding the courage to get back on our feet, because we need that. But we've got to make sure that we address burnout. We've got to make sure that we build our community, and we seek our own personal community as well as our own work community, so that we address this. I just want to say there is so much good work happening here. I hope you all take a moment today, or whenever you have a moment to take, to reflect on the conversations that have happened this week, to really reflect on these conversations, to realize how many people are with you in this stampede to transform our food system. A stampede to transform our food system together, one that is better for our kids, and one that our kids, I can't believe, it's so great to hear, but one that our kids say they want to be part of, because that is what this stampede is all about. So congratulations for a really incredible summit. I know there's more conversations to be had. I'm not wrapping this up, but I hope you, as you go back to your communities, as you take the time this afternoon, tomorrow, the next few days, to really process the stampede that is here, the stampede that is going to come as a fruit of all of these conversations, and to not let this be the end, because this is really another sparking point.
Well, Under Secretary Moffitt, I would
I know you have to leave, so I want you to kind of have the space and not rush out. You know, if we have just maybe another minute or two, if there might be a question in the audience, this guy right here, hold on a minute. We have some time for questions for everyone else that doesn't have to leave, but.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate hearing everybody speak. It's really beautiful, this summit, coming together, networking, envisioning the future. And one of the things that I haven't really heard a lot about during this conference, during this summit, is the underlying causes of the dysfunction within the food system. And I would say that a lot of that has to do with corruption in politics, problems with policy, you know, influence from big industry like pharma, ag, chemical, you know, and so I want to know, you know, we're little guys, you know, I've never gotten a seat at the table with anybody in the DC world. And so I want to know, are you courageous enough to stand up to that corruption? You know, and what can you tell us? How can we talk to the political environment, the people out there in those positions to say, hey, you know, enough is enough. We're in this problem right now with our food system because of systemic inequality and corruption, and we're tired of it.
Thank you for that. And we have to be courageous. We have no other choice but to be courageous. We have no other choice but to be courageous and to make sure that there is room at the table, that there is not just room at the table, that there is a prominent place at the table for everyone in our food system, for everyone in agriculture, and particularly for the voices who haven't been at the table for far too long, and the voices who don't always feel comfortable at the table. When we talk about DEIA, I often, very importantly, talk about it's not just making space for people to be present and to have a voice, but we've got to make sure people feel welcome and wanted, that we want to make sure folks are there. So it's not just about having the courage to hear from people and to bring people in, but it's about having the courage to uplift the people whose voices we haven't been hearing for far too long. And I want to also just highlight, we've got some kids in the room. now he's looking at me like, oh gosh. But this is so, I mean, how wonderful is this? And I used to bring my daughter to stuff too. So that we have youth interested in agriculture. It is so critical. So thank you for being here. And sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, Undersecretary Moffitt has already, regretted, lamentably has to leave. She told me she would love to continue this conversation. Unfortunately, she has to catch that plane out of Harlingen. So we want to make sure you get there, because I know you still have to connect somewhere else. So, but the conversation that we've had thus far, we've appreciated your presence here. Thank you for coming and listening and learning, and then also sharing your wisdom with the rest of us. We will continue the conversation as you're leaving. You're welcome to live stream it as you're driving to the airport. There's gonna be some great questions, I'm sure, from this audience. Now, for the next hour, what our plan is to just have a roundtable. Whoever wants to ask something, and we have 100 experts in this room. So if you have the answer, or you want a counterpoint, or you want to add to that question, then you stand up and you say something. We have so many people here that we want to include in this conversation. So we want to contribute to the vision that has been put forth in the guide that we've presented you. So we want to continue that conversation here. But for now, I want to just thank you, Undersecretary, for being here. It's really important, and it makes us very content and happy to hear and to have you listen to us.
Well, thank you, and thank you for, I mean, we got 3 great examples of great work that's happening, and I imagine it's multiplied over and over. So thank you for all of the great work that you're doing, and our door is always open. Don't hesitate to reach out, to call, to to invite us back here. So yeah, it's really a pleasure to be here and to have this conversation and to share this great work together.
Nobody leave just yet. Only one person is leaving.
Are we still up here?
I know Vera has to go too. Can we take a picture? Yes.
But I'm not sure what your name is. But I'm sorry, what is your name?
Daniel.
Daniel? Okay, that's my brother's name, so I'll remember. Daniel, I think it's really important work. I'm not sure if you're a farmer or if you have the ability to talk with the younger folks in your community. But some of the curriculum that we use with our farm to school, it teaches them the technical stuff about farming, like the soil science and like the beneficial bugs and the botany part of it. But we bleed into the tough conversation part where it's like the gender gap, the racism that exists within this oppressive systems that you talked about. And we don't shy away from having those conversations as farmers, as educators, because that's what we are. We serve a double role within that program. And we have kids asking us, why are women paid less, right? How come we don't have a Gucci HEB by my colonia? And so like being able to plant that seed, not just the seed of gardening and how powerful it is and beneficial it is, but also the one about demanding a seat at the table and not asking for a seat at the table. And so I just felt it was really important for me to try and respond to you. Thanks for asking that question.
Daniel, I'm gonna also talk to you as an educator, and this is just my professional outlook. As I mentioned to you, food has always been subsidized, always, right? And the only thing that only organism, I mean, plants are miraculous because they can take energy from the sun and use some basic building blocks to create tissues. Then that feeds insects, that feed birds, that feed other organisms, and that feed humans. But it all comes from there's this energy flow. And then over time, as we started to kind of mechanize and modernize agriculture, all of a sudden certain subsidies were being replaced by others, and then that subsidy, for example, these external inputs that have replaced other ways, or like organic matter, other ways that we have helped subsidize agriculture. Unfortunately, some of those have been linked to profit, right? And so that has, unfortunately, profit has dominated our current food system. And I think that's what your answer is. How can we remove the focus from profit to people and the planet? This is, right? Right. There's a very interesting dissertation. I can't remember the name of the scholar. It's called The Social Life of the Tortilla. And it talks about how corn in its history became commodified, right? And how, and that process of commodification then removes some of the things we've talked about at this summit. It removes culture, it removes care for the farm, the soils, it removes care for the people, and it just takes it and, you know, puts it in a plastic bag and then ships it all around the world. And then you buy it for 99 cents, right? And you can't convince me that it only costs less than $1 for us to get that corn from where it came from. But the crazy thing is that somebody still made money, right? And they've subsidized it that whole way through cheap labor, harms to the environment, desecration of culture. It's been subsidized. So the question that I asked earlier today is, how can we as a community, so here's the hard part. It's not going anywhere. It's always going to be, because those decisions are made by other people. The part of the summit is, what decisions can we make ourselves, where then we subsidize our food production through care, through contact and relationships, through changing in our professional and personal capacities what we do. I mean, I don't have the answer. I mean, this is why we're here, is to try to understand what everyone else does, including yourself, including the folks here. Mr. Hogan runs a farmer's market, keeps that thing alive through thick and thin, rain or shine, moving. We asked him to come and do the farmer's market here, and we understood how difficult these things are to do, but we must, right? And so I don't have an answer to your question. What I'm trying to say is that the answer isn't on the stage. Someone said yesterday that the answers are in the community. And if only we had a space, or we had farmers, with faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, young people, universities, educators, all in a room to talk about it. Let's talk. Ariana, you wanted to say something. What do you got to say?
Oh, I was going to say what has happened to corn, what's happened to a lot of other foods that were culturally important, like potatoes, corn, tomatoes, and it really shows, the word corn really shows what has happened to our food system, because calling it corn instead of calling it maize really says, like, this is just a feed. It's just a feed. It's like animal feed. And that's what we turn tomatoes and potatoes into, all of these foods. It's just a like feed, and it's no longer food, like culturally important food that we associate with like what we grew up with now. Because when you're getting it from a store, you don't have that connection. Like, a lot of people don't know where these things are from. It was in high school when I figured out that dragon fruit came from Central America. Like, I didn't know it was in Central America for, like, through the 1900s. I had no idea that, I thought it was grown in Asia, like, that it was from Asia, until my grandma told me about these cactus trees that would grow these like spiky fruit. And I thought like, I had no idea I had that connection to that. And now I can't consume them the same because I think of my grandmother. And so how do you bring like the maize back to our culture, the tomatoes back to our culture, instead of it just being a commodity?
So these mics, I'm not holding them because I want, there you go, Dr. Rodriguez, we're gonna pass these around because this right here is a time for all of us to converse. Can you tell us who you are?
Sure. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Rod Rodriguez, City of Brownsville, Health, Wellness, Animal Services. You know, the question came to me, especially Vero earlier said, how many non-for-profits are out there? My thought too was, why are more cities not here to listen? You know, I come from a local government, and I find it disheartening that more local cities in the RGV should be here listening to every side of the coin. So it starts with one city, and hopefully it moves on to outward, but engage. I think earlier I also heard the Undersecretary mention you need to be involved, you need to show up and push the people who are in power and hold that authority to understand this side of the coin and start to have that open dialogue in ways and show up at your city meetings and demand better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to add to that. So my name is Amber Siligo, and I work for the Organic Center. We're a nonprofit based in DC. We don't do advocacy work ourselves, but we actually help put science behind advocacy. So when claims are being made or questions are being asked, we find the data behind that. So for one example that I think we're sort of talking about here, and a question that Dr. Rossellas asked is, you know, how do we get when we're working in a commodified system, how do we get the people at the top to listen to us? And sometimes we have to speak a different language. Sometimes that language means economics. So, you know, if we could put a monetary value on the costs of these farming systems and compare that to other farming systems and monetize the benefits that we get from these other farming systems. And also, I just wanted to mention that it does take all of us. So we do have a lot of different players in this room that work in different parts of the system. And sometimes we can feel like, just as a normal consumer and citizen, like the politics, you know, calling up the president's office feels impossible or ridiculous. But actually, really, Congress is wanting to hear from us. And every year, I have the opportunity with my organization to storm the Hill. And they listen. I go to these offices and they listen, and everybody is welcome to go. And if you can't go, you can pick up the phone and you can call. I sent in a postcard to Mitch McConnell, who is, I'm a constituent, one of his constituents. I live in Kentucky. And I got this really long letter written back to me. I know it wasn't him that wrote it, but it was his office. And I know that they take notes. I know that they listen. If we have a lot of us doing that, it does make a difference. And if you don't feel that you have the power to do that, there are lots of organizations that do have those connections, and you can talk with them and have a joint voice. So it is helpful. Like, I don't want to devalue the local work. It's amazing. Just mentioning we have to do it at all levels. So thank you.
Hi. I have a question, I guess. I'm hearing about asking for a seat at the table or making a space at the table and not asking, but just doing. I'm just going to say, why don't we just have our own table that we're making right now? And I'm asking for, I'm asking for the farmers that are here in this room right now, how worried you are about the future of the water, the soil, and the air that you're working in. Because I work on a very small farm in Corpus Christi, Texas, where industry is encroaching, buying up all the land around me, proposing 5 desal plants in the Gulf of Mexico, scaring people into forcing them to believe that there is this lack because they've sold off our drinking water to industries, and now they're believing that the only option for us is desal. How many of you are afraid that that's going to be happening to your community soon? To your soil systems being disrupted by industries, your air and your water systems. If you have a concern because you're working on leased land and that someone's going to sell it and you've been working that land your whole life and you don't know what's going to happen to you if it does get sold off, I want to talk to you. I would like to talk to you right after this, because we need to start forming bonds with one another, because it's not just about the social aspect. We already see how ugly this industry has treated people. It's about how ugly also it continues to treat the land, the water, and the air. And we are the ones who are working directly within all of those systems. So it's our responsibility to one another and to the future and to this planet to work together. So I'm here. I'll be here at the end if you want to give me your phone numbers, because I want to start meeting you farmers and I want to start hearing what you're working against, because I just told you what we're working against. Thanks.
I want to share something for the people, those who are working with the policy making and those who are working in the hallways of Washington, D.C. And this is a situation. As a grower, we have insurance policies. SARA, Risk Management Agency, has these insurance policies. But there is a different form of insurance policy is needed for growers. And that is insurance against not act of God, but act of government. I am a victim of several of that one. And every time they come and say, sorry, Dr. Scaria, but my loss in 2018 was about $800,000. That is at the time I started a business, I walked the talk, and AFIS made a mistake. And I'm an expert in that subject matter, but it doesn't matter. It was written, the law was written, it was written in stone. So nobody could change that one. Then recently I found out that one. I was caught in between a US Congress mandate given to SBA and FSA. I won't go into details, but there are many people, those who cannot talk about it or they don't have a way to communicate with them efficiently. I have corrected that one. And as of last week, I was able to make a correction that was in the books for 14 years that should have been made in 2023. So these things we need an insurance policy against the act of government. So if you want to get more details about it, ask me. I'll be happy to share with you.
When we moved into the valley and we started farming, I never was into politics. And now that's all I do is pay attention to politics. Because small farming is just like, I feel like we are what Cesar Chavez was years ago. The farm worker, it was the farm worker, now it's the small farmer. So you do need to get into politics. You do need to coordinate all the nonprofits, the for-profits, the educators, it's a whole pocket full of people that care and that need to make change, and that's the only way. We can complain all we want, but the only way we're gonna change is if we make the efforts to change it. They only listen to what we say. Vote, and I don't care who you vote for, just vote. Because they look at, does the community vote? Since half of our community doesn't vote, one way or another, they don't care. We're the last ones they pay attention to. So please, vote. About the water system, we travel to Indiana every year in July, and I saw the Mississippi River almost dry. And I cried, because I said, we're in trouble. We are in big trouble. And as I drove back, I saw all our ponds and all our areas dry. It's gonna take a lot of water to replace that. So we're in crisis. We have to figure out solutions. We're fighting politics, so we need a lot of unity and a lot of what we did this week here.
With that lady, I'm sorry, this lady, I'm sorry, I didn't even catch your name, the one who asked the question about land. I just got a text message from somebody who's live streaming from a land trust, and they want to get in touch with you about a cost share program to help keep the land under ag. Just
Fantastic.
it's on my watch. So please don't, make sure that we have your contact information. And let me address it because I think Mackenzie has another question.
Mackenzie?
I mean, this is a big concern, I think, and then I think we have several. This is a big concern, and I think this is interesting because, okay, yeah, it's just like streaming in. She said that, I mean, we also work and manage a 5-acre piece of land. And we have a partnership. Our landlord has been very gracious. She's actually in this room. She's been very gracious, and she has rented this land to us at a very affordable rate. Now, I can tell you that her and a lot of landowners in this area are getting calls weekly about selling that piece of property, right? And I see some nods because it's happening. In the last 5 years, in just this county, we lost 16% ag land. I think in Cameron County it's just about as much. And that's just only going to go up next year because all the sugarcane growers now don't have something to do, and you better believe that somebody's asking to buy that piece of property. And within years, all that's going to be covered in an impervious surface. That's going to be adding to urban heat islands. That's going to be adding to exacerbating some of the issues that you mentioned around soil health, around water, and these things just quickly compound, and then it's gone, right? The farm that we were working was actually zoned residential, and we had to get it moved back to ag. And the city manager told us, this is the first time I've ever seen that happen in the Rio Grande Valley. Nothing has ever moved. It went from natural forest, then to ag, then to residential or commercial or industrial, and never the other way around. And so but it can be done because, we've got people with certain stewardship of the land, who are partnering with our organizations like land trusts, like other organizations that have the same values of, that care in the same way. This is what we're talking about. Some of this, to answer your question, Daniela, we have to look for a different currency besides money. And, that currency is what we decide. Food. Happy families, young people. Yeah, yes, absolutely. So I'm just responding to your question. We'll get to you here. Mackenzie, you had a question, right?
Yeah, it's less of a question, more of a comment, but just piggybacking off of what Amber said and what Diana was saying, I think not even just voting and getting involved, but if you even are thinking for running for office, I just strongly encourage it. And just to share a quick story, I'm not from this community, I'm from Hawaii, but in my community, they spray an immense amount of pesticides. And we had one friend who's in the state legislature, and she was always trying to pass these bills to have buffer zones and have, support local farmers and transition to organic agriculture. And the head of the agriculture committee just kept blocking it. And we found out he was taking all this money from Bayer and Monsanto. And so we wanted to find someone to run for his position, and it was in my district, and me and my mom couldn't find anyone, and I was going to school here, or else I probably would have just done it. But so my mom did it, and she's never, been in politics before, but she just decided to do it, and she went to every single house in our whole district and had conversations and just said, I'm doing this because we can't even stop them from spraying pesticides near our schools. Because this person who's the head of the agriculture committee is blocking everything. And so she didn't win, but just by having those conversations, the Speaker of the House heard why she was running, and they removed him from the agriculture committee. They did replace him with someone who's also bad. So it wasn't ideal, but it got, and she was, got endorsed by SARA Club and all of the big environmental groups in the state. And that's someone who has zero public speaking experience, zero experience in politics, and she was she got pretty close. And so I say that to say, and I know Desi, he'll run your campaign for sure. He's already agreed to do that for anyone who wants to run here. So even if you're thinking about it, I would talk to him, and I would just say to go for it, because even if you don't win, you'll probably have some ripple effects that will make changes and get people thinking about, why are you running? What are the issues you care about? And it really matters, and it encourages other people. Now there's other people who saw my mom running who are going to run because they're like, oh, you don't even need experience? Okay, I'm going to do this. Obviously experience is important, but there's a lot of people in there who shouldn't be and who are not doing a good job. And so I really think like anyone in this room should do it.
I just want to comment on, how inspired and how proud I am that so many of you are asking amazing questions, but also so motivated to contribute to the social change. And it is exhausting. For the past 5 years, I have 6 years, I've been a community organizer in colonias. I am a Colonia resident. We take pride in saying that we are from colonias. We don't call ourselves a community, we call ourselves a colonia. And these people, I've talked about how much knowledge they have. Organizing and, fighting for social change is so hard. Sometimes, going to a house meeting, only one person would show up. And that one person, I would sit there and I would have conversations with them about how important it is for them to contribute, or, just having that conversation to talk about misunderstandings. And yesterday we had Lupe, La Unión del Pueblo Entero here. I worked for them for 5 years. I learned so much about the power of the people. And there's power in numbers. Don't go anywhere by yourself. Don't make calls by yourself. When at Lupe we have ven con 10, ven con 10. We bring 10 people with you wherever you go. If you're gonna make phone calls to your congressman, get 10 people to call with you. If you're going to go out to vote, take 10 people to go out with you. If you're gonna go to commissioner's court, right now, there's elections happening for our school board. And, if you take 10 people with you to go vote, or to the school board meetings to talk about the importance of the school farms, we can make a change together, but it's the community. And I think that was what was so stressful for me, that I needed a break also, because fighting for long-term change is so hard. It's so hard. You take a step forward, but then it's like something happens, you face barriers, and you take a step, or two back, and then you have to keep going, and you have to keep going. But, our communities are so resilient. And everybody that is in here is here because we know the importance of the work. And I wish there was more people. Right now I'm doing mental health, and I can tell you everything is connected. My mother was here yesterday, and she was an agricultural worker, and she carried so much trauma inside her heart. And she was not always my biggest fan when I was going to school and getting my education, because she said, your place is at home with your kids. You don't get to go to school. You don't get that privilege, because I was a high school dropout and a teen mom, But after I graduated, working with Lupe, it took me a while, but now she's a leader at Lupe. And she has begun to heal so much that now she participates in everything. And herself, she had her breakdown and said, I have so much trauma because when I was in 12th grade, my father plucked me from the school system to work in agriculture for the rest of my life. She's always been a food worker. And, we don't talk about their stories. We don't elevate them to the level. Instead, we hear conversations about they don't deserve wages above minimum wage. If they want better wages, then they should go to school, right? And my leader yesterday mentioned that we call agricultural workers unskilled laborers, but yet they are so skilled and they bring so much knowledge, and they take so much pride in the work that they do. And then we, you know, I don't want to say us because we don't contribute to that, but we live in a society that does take away from them and doesn't elevate those voices and lowers them down. So then we have a generation of kids that ignores that and says, well, they deserve to be treated that way anyways, right? So we all need to heal. All of this is transforming. All of this is healing. And I just want to remind people that we can fight against those giant corporations because we have the power. We're the consumers. We're the ones that are making them richer every day. And if all we do is just invite those people, like the Colonia residents, I was so happy when they were here yesterday and they were talking to the USDA. I actually, left the room because I wanted their voices to be elevated. I wanted that time for them so that their concerns could be heard. Because when we do that, we return that power to them, but then we also motivate them to keep participating and to continue. And so we have to keep doing this work. We have to keep building networks. Next year, let's make it bigger. Let's invite more people. Let's make sure that the mental health workers are here, right? That more organizations are here, that more nonprofits make sure that they reserve their date early so that they can be here with us having these conversations, and so that we can continue to make that change. Porque sí se puede, right? Oh, and one more thing. For the people that are interested in running, Lupe just has another branch, Lupe Votes, and they're supporting those people, right? I no longer work for Lupe, but I love the work that they do, and I took so much away from them that I really, truly value that organization.
Hello. Hi, my name's Sabrina. Something when I think about farming is how much time and labor and resources it takes to grow food that's not only culturally relevant, but also food that is regularly grown and that uses a lot of water or things like that. So I think about, and then I think about our society's issues and how we struggle with health conditions. Like, how many of our health conditions are caused because of our reliance on low nutritional foods like flour and sugar and like all these artificial chemicals and dyes and things like that. And I'm just like thinking about and connecting all of these things of like, what is a food system that is low maintenance, low labor, that uses the resources of the ecoregion we're in, because we're in the South Texas, kind of along the Gulf. And then it makes me think about, like, how come we're not integrating native food systems? How come we're not converting our diets to mesquite flour instead of wheat flour? Wheat is not native to the Americas, or at least the specific type that we use in the bags when we go make our tortillas and stuff. So how come we're not trying to, serve nopales tacos to the children at their schools? Because nopales just grows in the fields, It's very low maintenance. We don't have to water it. Like, it is made for the environment in which we're in right now. Prickly pear, even wild game, right? Like, think about like venison tacos or venison tamales. So I'm just thinking about, like, if the panel or if anybody here sees that direction, or if you're doing anything relevant to restoring native food systems like chili piquins, all the berries that are native to Texas, you know what I'm saying? Like, how come we're not integrating that into our diets and our meals and trying to build out native food systems?
And then Keegan, I would love to hear what you have to say. Now, Sabrina, so I'm an agricultural ecologist, right? You saw my shirt yesterday. I'm an agroecologist, and I study food systems from a systems viewpoint. And so we kind of use this term energetics. One of the ways we can look at how sustainable a food system is how much energy you put in and then how much energy you get out. It's like, a bank account. Hey, I'm only spending $2 a week and I'm making $10 a week, so I'm doing fine, right? And so these are the kinds of budgets that we look at as scientists. And so when you look at some of the traditional systems, like the traditional Mayan milpa, or the Central American milpa, that includes corn, bean, and squash. So when they use a lot of human labor, they also use like animal labor, they use like plows often. I used to work in Quintana Roo, Mexico, and doing work in milpas, actually studying milpas. And so for every 1 calorie of energy that they put in, they can harvest 10 calories of product out, right? So for every $1 you put in and you get $10 out, you're making money. You're sustaining, right? And so when you look at, for example, in Iowa cornfield, when you add up all like in here you have different types of energy. You kind of have petroleum, pesticides, machinery, and it still kind of breaks even, right? So there's certain ones, like for example, for every 1 calorie you put in, you get 1 calorie out, which is a break-even point. There are other crops, for example, like greenhouse tomatoes. When you add it all up, for every 2 calories of tomatoes, 1 calorie of tomatoes you get out, you actually have to put 2 calories of energy in. Beef is terrible. It's like, for every 1 calorie of beef you have to put in 40 calories to get 1 calorie of beef out. So it's like this kind of model, right? The unfortunate thing of using an energetics model is we can't, it's hard to put a currency on culture and care, right? Waste, right? So for example, when we look at the energetics of corn grown in the Midwest, you might say, hey, we're still making money. $1 in, $2 out, or $1 in, $1.50 out. You're winning, right? But when you think about everything else, like, okay, well, what about when after you irrigate it, use energy for that, and all that synthetic pesticides goes into the river? Who pays for that? Well, we all do. We all pay for that. The problem is that some people pay more than others, right? So we're borrowing. We're like, not just currently, but also in the future. We're borrowing some of our capital from future generations. And so I'm not saying like, why can't we, because there are several different crops, I think, not just some of the traditional ones, that we can break even and do better even, right? Some of those traditional systems that you mentioned. But I think we even think broader and thinking about, well, let's think about investing for our future. And so, I mean, I think there are some farmers who are experimenting with different crops, what grows best here in the valley. And it's interesting because sugarcane used to grow pretty well. It took a lot of energy, but believe it or not, it actually takes more energy now because it's hotter, right? And sugarcane grows well at 95 degrees, but at 105 degrees it actually doesn't grow that well. You have to throw more water, you have to throw more pesticides, more fertilizers. So it's this is where what you're trying to mention, this kind of systems way to think about things. I'd encourage you to do so. If you have great ideas, this is the spot. I mean, this is where like you say something and next year we're gonna say, wait, who did it, right? So this is the spot. Keegan.
Thanks, Alex. Keegan Kautsky with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Senior Advisor for Education and Equity. And I really appreciate your point. I wanted to share, we've spoken the last few days a bit about the Next Gen program and these investments. 5 of those projects are in Texas. And of the 33 projects, this $262.5 million that we invested last year through the Inflation Reduction Act, several of them from California to Texas are investing. So they're from $5 to $20 million each project, and through minority serving institutions, so a range of Hispanic serving institutions, tribal colleges, historically black colleges, and others. But those institutions designed the projects and proposed how could they best redefine the landscape of opportunity for young people in their region, in their areas. You know, one of those projects that I think is exactly what you're speaking to is a project that is looking at bringing traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous ecological knowledge into training programs for high school students, college students, graduate level, master and PhD students, and bringing them for experiential learning opportunities along the US-Mexico border, specifically to look at these practices and what are those opportunities to integrate it with regenerative agriculture practices and others, but to make sure that it's formally brought into K through 12 education, into undergraduate training, into postgraduate training for master's and PhD students across that continuum of learning. So how do we start formalizing this and valuing it? And that's really part of a bigger, so that was proposed by the universities, the institutions here in this part of the country, but it's part of a broader initiative that Deputy Undersecretary Begg spoke to yesterday for the Research, Education, Economics mission, which is how do we, across all of our research, across the 90 Agricultural Research Service laboratories and research centers in the country, in all of the work that we're doing, how do we incorporate indigenous, ecological knowledge and traditional knowledge into that research, into the work we're doing, into the educational grants that we're distributing across the K-12 pipeline, into colleges and universities across the country. So I wanted to say that because we're really trying to shift where the resource is going. How does this get built into curricula, get built into training programs at all levels to make sure that we're valuing it and we're recentering the soil. We're recentering these practices in agriculture, in agricultural research.
Thank you. I just have something to add to that. I'm also really curious about bringing in native plants into the farm system. I think there's so many benefits. Like we're talking about a water crisis, and what are we going to do? And one big way to conserve water is by growing those native plants. And I heard someone say there was like a processing issue, like with nopales, and there's another issue like transportation and storage possibilities. But I'm thinking like as we grow these local food systems and make business partnerships with local schools, local schools, they won't have to travel so far. And I think we can make something happen and like increase the amount of native plants being used as we grow these local food systems. Sorry, I'm super nervous. But yeah, something to think about.
I had a question for Keegan. Is that your name? So it's really wonderful to be incorporating that type of knowledge into education and planning for something in agriculture that's different. So my question is, how are those institutions helping those communities, those indigenous communities that are sharing their wisdom to try to help with these systems? What are these institutions giving back to show their appreciation for the knowledge that's being shared with them?
That's a great question, and I can't speak to the how each is individually engaging in that relationship. I think part of what I mentioned was the difference is trying to put the resources into the hands of the tribal college that's serving that population and that community, and allowing them to define what is the program that they are looking to create for themselves. And that's how the Next Gen program was designed, so that it was specifically going through those institutions to better reflect the needs and interests of the community and to allow them to shape it. I will speak to just last week, we had a series of tribal consultations, and again, meeting with tribal college presidents and tribal leaders and chiefs across the country, specifically looking at how can we address barriers that still exist? How do we better serve those communities and actually listen and understand what the needs are? And I think that's been the focus of both the funding and the grants in the cycle, but also just in the process of doing better to actually make sure that the locus of power is shifted to the community itself, how better to do that than to make sure that the resources go directly to them to design and define and then deliver and build the capacity to do this work so that it's not external, so that it's not coming from the government saying what it should be and how it should be delivered, but to actually allow the community itself to design it.
Keegan, do you mind if I just chime in? So, you know, we are a Hispanic serving institution, right? And outside of university in Puerto Rico, we have the largest concentration of Hispanic students in the country at an institution. Now, we are not a land-grant institution, right? And, you know, some of our land-grant counterparts across the country get monies that are appropriated to them every year. And I'm talking to the tune of $40, $80 million a year, because they also get state matching funds. And so they're the ones who want to train our students in agriculture. And they have the best facilities, the top ones. I mean, because they're resource rich. I've talked to you about this before. And you know, if you come to UTRGV, we're coming up. But do we have A&M money? Or do we have Purdue money? Or do we have Davis money? We wish. But what we do have is the cultural capital of our students, right? They come to us with what I think industry and government want, right? Our students have power. They're bilingual. The superpower of being able to talk to two different groups of people instead of one, but they're bicultural. You know, some of them have links to are members of colonias, are members of these under-resourced communities that the USDA so desperately wants to access. So when I get emails from my counterparts at Purdue or, you know, other institutions, and they're doing great work, but they say to me, you know what, Alex, we know you don't have the money. Send us your students and we'll train them. And then I say, you know what? Why don't you send us your students and we'll train them, right? How to work in this space. But with what money, right? So we're trying to find ways to support institution like ours, like you know, Cal State Sacramento, like some of the tribal colleges who are underfunded by the USDA, but are doing are fulfilling USDA's mission in what we do. So my question to you is, this is one of the recommendations that is in the equity report. What are some ways that the USDA can invest in institutions like this? And I know that the next gen is one way, but I'll give you I'm going to put a little bit of parameters on that question. We have institutions all across the country that are desperately getting this HSI status. And if you guys don't know what this is, HSI is a federal designation that means that you've reached a certain threshold in your enrollment, 25%. And once you reach that threshold, then you qualify for USDA HSI funds. You qualify for these next gen funds.
Alexis, which stands for?
Hispanic Serving Institutions. Did I not say that? Thank you. USDA has it's called HSI, Hispanic Serving Institutions. So I have colleagues from University of Illinois Northwest. They'll call me. They'll say, hey, we're about to get this HSI designation. Help us. Imagine what it means to be serving. That's the S part of Hispanic Serving Institution. What does it mean to be a serving institution? A lot of institutions just want to get there so that they can get the money. Now, these grants are great, but they're called competitive grants for a reason. You got to compete, right? And you're asking us to run a race, a 200-yard race, where you've given some schools a 160-yard head start because they've been getting money for the last 160 years for federal investment. We can't win. resource-rich institutions don't have the capacity to do it. And so you've heard this question already. How can we build that capacity without missing out on access to these monies? Because every year that goes by and these large institutions get the status, they win. Okay, so that's question A. Question B. The best way I train my students is I send them to Diana Padilla, or I send them to Shakira Regoza. Because they learn from the experts. All we do is we kind of have them open the book, and then we have them learn from people who know what they're doing. We put them with Idea Public Schools. We put them in the context where that experiential learning piece part. How can we get these institutions to get that money so that they can do that work? Because they can do it even better than we can, right? So that's a two-part question for you.
Yeah, no, I so appreciate this, and this is one of the most important areas of work we can all do to make sure that we are actually making sure that the resources are going to the communities and to the institutions that need them most. The most important thing is we all have to vote. We have to vote because Congress authorizes not only the amount of money that we can distribute through the National Institute of Food and Agriculture and through USDA to these institutions, but it also sets in many cases the parameters of who qualifies or who doesn't. And if a matching requirement is in place, which oftentimes is an additional barrier, especially for community colleges or tribal colleges or others that may not have the ability to mobilize other resources to match that federal grant to access it. So again, most important is to vote. We need everyone to raise their voice to make sure that your representatives are advocating for your HSIs, for your HISACUs, your Hispanic Serving Agricultural Colleges and Universities as well. Part of what NIF has been actively working on is not just to make sure that we include every possible institution in those parameters, to make sure that, you know, even if it's a 2-year institution that maybe only has 1 or 2 degree programs that are related to environmental and biological sciences, do they meet the threshold where we can consider them a HISACU so that they can qualify for more federal resources? So we're actively working to make sure that we continue to do that research and expand the inclusion of these institutions so that more are benefiting. Many of the federal grants in education are tied to specific institution types, and that is defined by Congress. So a lot of the inequity in the system, how many resources are available to an HSI versus a historically black college, versus a tribal college, versus an 1862 land-grant institution, oftentimes it's actually defined by Congress and by the parameters of those laws. And whether it's competitive or a capacity grant, which also changes, like you're saying, we know that more capacity grant funding is needed because you're actually building the ability of an institution to serve and support its community. So you're absolutely right. There are several efforts. Happy to discuss in more detail with anyone that would like to discuss that further later as well. But the most important piece is actually getting Congress to authorize the funding and more equitable funding for all institutions, especially as the number of HSIs grow. You know, this is an increasing challenge because those disparities are getting worse and worse every year, right? More and more institutions that fall within this designation serving these communities, and yet there's no more resources being added to the pool for them. So they're sharing less and less. Again, it's only going to get worse unless we actually get some of those foundational pieces fixed.
I think, can you pass it to just Sylvia right behind you? I think she had her hand up.
I was hoping you would forget that I'd raised my hand. I missed yesterday, but I've been here every other day or every day here, and I'm really, I'm probably going to get a little bit emotional, but it's been really enriching to be listening to all these conversations. I am a professor here at UTRGV, but I'm also from here. My family comes from San Luis Potosí, but my grandmother moved over here when she was 16, seeking work, and she met my grandfather here, and they made a family, and now I'm here. But one of the things that I do want to emphasize, well, there's several things, is that our families and our communities come with a lot of knowledge. Okay, so we need to flip that conversation, right, and try and become the experts, and instead build coalitions with families. And, you know, a lot of them are farm workers, but a lot of them are not, right? But they're campesinos, and they come with, we have a lot of knowledge in our homes and in our communities. So from a school perspective, from any institutional perspective, we really need to take that into account. Because, you know, I am all about destroying the table that's currently there. It's like saying we want to be part of the, you know, we want a piece of the pie. Well, we don't, because that pie has been harming our communities for a very long time, right? So we have to really start digging a little bit deeper. But another point that I wanted to share is, and I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but is that I think that it's really important for us to one, take that into account, but also, I don't know, just be able to relate a little bit better, right, with each other. I think land is really great. So, okay, this is it now. We are currently being censored in this state through policy, through law, right? As an educator, it's really hitting hard in what I can say and what I can't say. And I've been talking to a lot of teachers who are feeling the pressure of not being able to speak up because they can't teach this, they can't teach that. So foodways is a great way to be able to teach civics, you know, to be able to teach other things that are not necessarily part of, you know, or are thought of as social studies or as critical race theories or other things that are being tabooed or stigmatized or politicized currently. So for all you who are in the education system, use food as a way to teach civics, right? Use food as a way to teach systems, right, that are impacting our everyday lives, because it is part of it, right? So thank you, everybody who's doing the work, right? Or everybody in this room.
Well, I'd like to just thank everyone for sticking around to the very end. I mean, we really, when we envisioned putting this together, it's the end. On a Saturday. Oh, well, look, this is what I'm being told. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That's I'm getting, no, but here's the thing. You know, we've been having these conversations for years. I don't know if you remember, Deanna, you and I once, we were on a panel with this guy who wrote How Hungry is America? I don't know if his name is Joel Berg, and he's a very famous author. He did a lot of research on hunger in New York. He came and talked about his book, and he said, hey, look, you guys are trying to put out a 4-alarm fire, you know, when you really need to call on the federal government because they have the fire trucks and they can put this out right away. And I thought it was someone else on the panel. It might have, I can't remember who it was. They didn't say this, but I can feel it. They're like, do you think we're stupid? Do you think we didn't call the fire department already? It's just that we're on this island at the very south tip of Texas, and it's going to take them hours or days or years to come. I mean, the fact that you guys are here now, USDA's here now, shows us, but we've been asking for a long time. We called the fire department a long time ago. Now, that doesn't mean no one's dumb enough to call the fire department and just wait. At least down here, we know we're going to be waiting. So what we do, we grab a bucket. We grab our little hose. And we're going to try and put this fire out until some help gets here. Now, it is tiring. It is exhausting. But if we have a plan, right, we all grab a bucket and we just start. We can't wait. We just start. I mean, the longer we wait, the more farm workers suffer. The longer we wait, if we wait another 5 years, we've lost another 16% of ag land, right? So we need, this is a triage moment. We have to act now, and we have to plan for the future. But how more, so I told you I was teasing, like somebody asked me, do you have burnout, right? Now, if I I think we all felt this. You're the only one with a bucket. But now you look around and you have everybody holding a bucket, right? We've got mushroom producers holding the bucket. We got chefs holding a bucket. We got young people holding a bucket. We got farmers market on this bucket brigade. We've got faith-based people holding a bucket. Community advocates, everybody in a row with the plan, just trying to put out this fire ourselves. And they may never come, but it doesn't matter. They can, and when they do come, grab a bucket. Just start now, right? This is what the food vision that we put together for you. Please take a copy, because for those who want to come and help, read our plan. We don't want you to just do whatever. We've got people coming in and saying, we want to do obesity plan, and we've already started. And we're like, well, nobody's heard. We want to do this Colonia business program. Well, follow the guidelines. Get in line. We all want to help our colonias, and we are. Help those who are already putting out these fires. So we are building this coalition. This is what the Food Summit's for. Somebody said we want to do it bigger next year. Please do it. it help us, right?
I don't need a mic. This is the 4th Hispanic Conference attached to the Food Summit, and the first two were, it just thundered, made my heart soft. And this one has been fantastic from the beginning to the end.
Well, we have a lot of people to thank, Deanna. Thank you for that, because I will say this has been exhausting. You can look at my face. I've been tired. And in fact, some of you guys didn't see this, but I had a breakdown 2 days ago at the party, right? Because, and I'll tell you why. Because somebody took a picture of me and my students, and it's tiring. But somebody asked me that day, are you burned out, Alex? Because you look tired. And I said, you know what? I looked back at my students, and they're here. I started to cry, because I was like, oh my gosh, look at all these people with a bucket, right? We're not alone. And of course, if everyone has a bucket and everyone's hot, sweaty, fighting the same fight, you're not going to just sit down, right? You're not going to just I'm going to put my bucket down for just a little bit. You are going to keep on going. And this is where that care piece comes in. And I'm so thrilled that you all care. And if you care so much, let's do it again next year, right? Right? I want to just also thank our sponsors, because we have had a ton of folks step in. I told you, my friend Todd Corley with Carhartt, he called me up right after they did their equity convening in Michigan, and he said, what do you need? I can't be there. And I was like, we could use some help because our budget's tight. He said, okay, well, how can I help? I said, well, we've got a bunch of students and other dignitaries coming for lunch on Friday. Will you make it special for them? And thanks to that sponsor, we were able to make a really nice lunch. You guys had that lunch today again, and I think we all appreciate that. There are a bunch of other sponsors that are in the back of your packet. If you guys came to our reception on Thursday, I mean, the Peculiar Nest was an amazing host, right? I think you guys all saw that. And so please take a moment to read through our sponsors. If you see some businesses here, please support their businesses. We also want to thank our collaborators at NCAT, the National Center for Appropriate Technology. They were able to host the first 2 days through a grant from the USDA. We'd also like to give a special thanks to the Institute of Ecology, Scholarship, and Health, these two young folks right here. who, with a small crew, did the work of an army. You guys did a tremendous job. They were everywhere. And then finally, I'd like to give some special thanks to UTRGV Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement. I think Colin's still here and a few others. Izzy Galindo has been monitoring this screen in the back. He won't even look at me now, but he's been monitoring the live stream, and we've had, we had somebody call in as other people were asking questions, texting me with answers or invitations to engage. That just shows you the power of getting the message out there. Thanks to Izzy, thanks to Desi, and the ladies that had been up front, Kati and Dalia. I mean, this has been a true work of care and love, and I appreciate that you've appreciated it. Thank you very much. And I won't say see you next year, because we want to see you before next year, right? Now, the last thing I want to ask is if you've read the vision and you have any other things you want to put in there, we will put it in, because it's everyone's vision. It's a working draft, right? This gives anyone else from the outside in a mandate and saying, we would love your help, but we want you to grab a bucket in this way. And don't forget of what we want and what we need and what we bring. And so that's my request for all of you guys. Please contribute. There's different ways of engaging, and you can always reach out to me and anyone of the team, and we're happy to have you participate in that working group. Thank you so much again. See you next time.